Hello and welcome to the 19th episode of Season 3 of the Educational Duct Tape Podcast. This is the 85th episode of the show and the 60th regular episode. Today I'm joined by Sam Kary of the new EdTech Classroom YouTube channel and blog. We'll talk about ways to develop engaging instruction, the TPACK and SAMR Technology Integration Models, actively learn, Whiteboard.chat, Whiteboard.fi, and more. Let's get started.
Hi, I'm Chris Nesi from the House of EdTech Podcast, a part of the Education Podcast Network, just like the show you're listening to right now. Shows on the network are individually owned and opinions expressed may not reflect others. Find other interesting education podcasts at edupodcastnetwork.com.
Welcome to the Educational Duct Tape Podcast with Jake Miller.
Welcome! What's up, duct tapers? For the returning listeners, welcome back. I'm so glad you're here once again. For our new friends, welcome in. I'm so honored to have you here with us. As most of you already know, my name is Jake, and I'm here to talk to you about duct tape and educational technology, and how, in my silly mind, the two of them go together to form an EdTech integration mindset that I think that you could use in your learning environments now. I have to apologize, by the way, for my voice today. I've been battling what I believe is an allergy-induced sinus infection for about 8 days. I'm about to pause to cough, as a matter of fact. Anyhow, I'm sure you hear that in my voice. Seriously, I'm going to pause right now. Okay, I'm back. I've been battling this for about 8 days, and I'm sure you hear it in my voice. I keep putting this recording off, or I kept putting this recording off, I should say, until I felt and sounded better, but that time just never came. So here I am sounding sick in your earbuds. I'm really sorry about that. Fortunately, today's interview, though, came before I was sick, so I sound like my normal goofy self in that interview. Speaking of that interview, I'm so psyched to have Sam Kary on the show today. I first saw Sam's work on YouTube in early 2020 and have been blown away by how much awesome content he's created in the time since then. If you're looking for EdTech tutorials or free online PD, his channel is one that you've got to subscribe to. Get on that. And if you're looking to hear more of Sam's insights about engaging instruction, you've just got to keep listening right here, because Sam's going to share about that with us. Before we get to that, though, here's a word from one of today's sponsors. If you work in a school anything like mine, you're probably experiencing some squirrely activities in the halls and restrooms when your students, who are as ready for summer break as we are, leave your rooms and head out with the freedom for mischief that is a hall pass. Most schools have been using the same hall pass system for the last 100 years. E-Hall Pass is an innovative, contactless, low-cost, and easily implemented digital tool that helps schools with security, oversight, and social distancing needs. E-Hall Pass can limit hall traffic building-wide, can restrict frequent flyers, prevent meetups, and can even prevent locations like the bathroom from overcrowding. Know who's in the hall at all times. Visit ehallpass.com for more information and to learn about a free no-commitment pilot. That's e-hallpass.com. Before we get to my chat with Sam, I'd like to tell you about the next regular episode of the podcast, which is the Season 3 finale episode. I want you to be a part of it. I want you, my friend, to share with the other duct tapers. And because I'm not above bribing, I'm going to send a free signed copy of my book when it comes out, whenever it comes out, to one of the people that share something on the season finale episode. Do I have your attention? I bet I do. A teacher's favorite word? Free. And if you're one of the people that share something that becomes part of the episode, you'll have a chance at winning a free signed copy of my new book when it comes out this summer. First, let's talk about what you can share. You've got 4 options. First up, option A, you could share a favorite, let's call it a giggle moment, or a funny memory from this season. Think about something that made you laugh out loud while you were listening. You were driving down the highway, you giggled, people looked over at you from the next car over like, what's that guy listening to? I bet it's awesome. Look back over those episodes from this school year and reflect. What things made you laugh out loud? We'd love to hear about it. Option B is to share a favorite EdTech takeaway from this show. Not just any EdTech tip that you were excited about this year, but something from this show. What was something that you learned and were super excited about? Whatever it was, we'd like to hear about it again. It's nice to remind us and bring those ideas back for us. Maybe we missed them the first time around, and you reminding us of them will perk them back up in our memories. The third option, option C, is my personal favorite. This is called a duct taper success story. And this is what I hope the bulk of the season finale episode is. That's you sharing your successes you had this year that came out of this podcast. What's something that you heard here in duct tape land that you tried out in your own class or school and had a great success with? We would love to celebrate your success, so share it with us so it can be a part of that episode. And finally, option D, did you have a favorite soapbox moment this year? If so, Soapy and I would love to hear about that too. Was it Michael Jordan and his baseball career? Maybe it was Tim Toady a couple weeks ago. Maybe it was the Ducks. I don't know. There was a lot of different ones. Did you have a favorite soapbox moment? If so, let us know. So share your own success story or your favorite giggle moment, or your favorite EdTech takeaway that comes from the show, or your favorite soapbox moment for your chance to win a free signed copy of my book when it comes out. And you know what? I think I probably should just send some stickers and stuff to everybody and a free signed copy to that one person. Don't you think? So send in one of those, get a little bit of swag from me, and one of you will win a free signed copy of my book whenever that launch date is. You have two ways to share. Number one is on my SpeakPipe page, which is at speakpipe.com/edu duct tape. That's EDUDUCTTAPE. Or option number two is on my Flipgrid for the show, which is at flipgrid.com/edu duct tape. So again, on SpeakPipe or Flipgrid, links are in the show notes. One person who gets included in the season finale will win a free signed copy of my book when it comes out, and everybody who's included in that season finale will get some stickers sent to them in the mail. You have until the end of the night on May 31st to submit it. And if you get on the finale episode, you'll have a chance to win that free copy of my book when it comes out, hopefully late June. And I am not accepting late work on this assignment, folks. End of the night on May 31st. That's a hard due date. No late work. The end of the night on May 31st. Unless, of course, maybe you're, I don't know, Dr. Jill Biden. Dr. Biden, if you'd like to submit an idea, I will accept it from you on June 1st. But no later, Dr. Biden. You get one extra day. Could you imagine if she submitted one? I think I'd pass out. Anyhow, to Dr. Biden and all of you, I would love to hear from you. Next up, really quickly, my calendar. In June, I'll be kicking off the 10th and final cohort of my virtual course called Best Practices and Tools for Learning in All Settings. That 12.5 contact hour, 7-week asynchronous course will level you up on using Flipgrid, Screencastify or Loom, EdPuzzle, and Pear Deck or Nearpod in your classes, whether they're fully in-person, remote, or concurrent next year. You'll be ready for using those tools in any of those settings. You can get details at jakemiller.net/KSU course 2020. Also in June, I'll be part of the virtual summit at Murray State, WitCon, and Oconee County Summer Institute. Those are all virtual. I'll also be in person at the Alabama Educational Technology Conference and the Panhandle STEM Conference. In July, I'll be a part of the virtual Teach with Tech Conference. Once again, I think this is year 3 in a row. It's such a great conference. As well as doing an in-person educational duct tape workshop for Hardin Schools in Kentucky. Plus, one more event in July that I'm still waiting on a contract for. In August, I'll be doing one of the virtual keynotes for the G-Tech Summit. That one's a free one, guys. You should look out for that one. And I will also be doing an in-person for a day of PD at the Phillipsburg School District in New Jersey. Wow, that's a lot. That's a lot for a summer. I didn't realize just how much it was until I said that all out loud. But you know what? Guess what? If you've got an event coming up, I would still love to be a part of it. I'd like to make that list even longer by including your event in there. So if you're planning an event, please head over to jakemiller.net/speaking to see some speaking videos and to send me a message. Oh, sorry. Hold on. Let me just grab my soapbox from over here. Yeah. There we go. That's perfect. Climb up on there. My head hurts. My ears feel like I'm currently underwater. My voice sounds weird. I've gone through pounds of tissues in the last week. Yeah, I've got a sinus infection. At least I think it's a sinus infection. Every spring, I have issues with allergies. But this spring, it just seems worse than usual, which is par for the course, isn't it? Every year, being a teacher is hard work, but this year is worse than usual. So why wouldn't my allergies go the same way, right? Teaching this year has felt a bit like having a sinus infection. There's always been pressure on us as teachers, but it's typically been manageable. This year, it's been rough. You know that sinus pressure feeling where you want to straighten out a wire shirt hanger and jam it through your ear to release the pressure? No? No, you don't? You've never wanted to do that? That's just me? Oh. Well, pretend that you understand that feeling, because that's what it's been like being a teacher this year. We just need something to release some of the pressure. Be on the Zoom. Be present with your in-person students. Develop rapport. Formatively assess. Keep in touch with parents. Don't forget standardized testing. Be sure your remote students feel connected. You got to do well on those standardized tests, guys. Don't spend too much time at your computer, though. Interact with your students. Put on your mask. Sanitize that table. Oops, you're out of Purell. Go get some more for your students to use. And the list goes on. Pressure, pressure, pressure. And while shirt hangers aren't good tools for clearing sinus infection, I think I now hear that in my own head. Other tools are good tools for clearing sinus infection. Medications, neti pots. I know they both help me, but what about pandemic teaching pressure? Those things can resolve and clear up some sinus head pressure, but what about pandemic teaching pressure? You can't pour a salt, baking soda, and distilled water concoction through your lesson plans to clear out that pressure. How can we reduce that pounding pressure that we feel this year and have felt this year? Well, I think that educational technology often helps with that. Flipgrid helps us maintain that rapport and connections and can reduce that pressure. Pear Deck, Nearpod, Whiteboard.chat, Whiteboard.fi, Jamboard, and others help us keep all our students involved and on task and participating. That could resolve some of that pressure. BlueKit and GimKit keep our students smiling. That could resolve some of that pressure. And if we use them right, they all reduce the pressure. They don't add to it. I often had issues as a tech coach getting teachers to try new tech tools. It felt like they added pressure to them. It felt like another thing in a head already filled with pressure. I took 20 minutes to drive to and from the store for medicine the other day. I'm actually about to turn around and go back out in my car and go pick an antibiotic up. It'll take me 20 minutes, but it'll be worth it. I take 10 minutes a day to use the neti pot to clear out my sinuses a bit, but it's worth it. I took time earlier today to have a virtual visit with my doctor, but it's worth it. I've taken some naps when my head hurt. It took time away from other things, but it was worth it. They all help to relieve the sinus pressure. So how do we relieve the teaching pressure? What steps can we take that might take some time, but ultimately relieve some of that pressure on us? It took me time to learn to use BlueKit and develop some sets of questions, but it's been worth it. It took me some time to learn to use Pear Deck and to set up dozens of lessons and activities with it, but it's been worth it. All of these things take time, but ultimately we profit because they reduce the pressure. And that's what's key. Select things that reduce the pressure for you, not things that add to it. Select tech tools that help you meet your goals or solve your problems, not just arbitrary tech tools. When I had my visit with my doctor, I listened to what he told me to do because I had a defined problem and he had a defined solution. If you're a tech coach, tech leader, or administrator, be the doctor for the teachers you work with. Listen to the symptoms, identify the problems, and prescribe the solutions. And ask your patients, those teachers, if they feel comfortable with those solutions. And possibly more importantly, don't prescribe things that don't reduce the pressure. I might need to ask my own administrator to listen to this soapbox moment. Don't ask teachers to do things that don't relieve pressure or, improve their metaphorical classroom health. I mean, some things that we're asked to do or should do, maybe they don't take away from the pressure that we're already feeling, but maybe they do benefit us and our learners and our classrooms. And if these things do relieve the pressure, or they do make that classroom health, I'm using my air quotes right now with classroom health, if they do help in our classroom, then make sure the teachers see that too. Because if they don't, they're not super likely to feel good about taking that medicine or take it at all. A doctor can't prescribe something to a patient who doesn't believe that the symptoms are there. When we go to the doctor, we either showed up with symptoms or they gave us some kind of test, like say a blood pressure test or an x-ray or something like that. And they identified symptoms and we're like, oh, okay, those are the symptoms and this is what the doctor says will handle them. If we don't see the symptoms, then we're not going to trust the medication. You can't prescribe something if there's nothing that needs fixed, right? If a teacher doesn't see the need for the tech, it's just another thing, more pressure. But if they see the symptom, the need, the problem, if they have the goal, then it's medicine, and they'll gladly take it.
Today's guest.
All right, today our guest is Sam Kary. Sam is the founder of the New EdTech Classroom, a YouTube channel dedicated to showing teachers how to teach with technology. Sam believes strategic technology integration helps teachers create interactive, personalized, authentic learning experiences, as well as ensure students develop the skills they'll need for the future job market. You could find all of Sam's work on the New EdTech Classroom YouTube channel or on his website, newedtechclassroom.com. And you can also connect with him on Twitter at New EdTech Class. But not on Twitter or on YouTube or on his website, but right here in the podcast is Sam. Welcome in, Sam.
Thanks so much for having me, Jake.
I'm so psyched to have you on the show, Sam, because you're like, I keep recommending your YouTube videos all over the place. And the rate at which they have just like blown up, like you forgot to list in your bio there when you provided that to me, that you're the founder of the New EdTech Classroom, a YouTube channel. You didn't say a 167,000 subscriber YouTube channel, Sam. That is bonkers, man. Congratulations.
Thanks. Yeah, it's been a wild ride for sure.
Yeah, and it's much deserved. I mean, the videos are fantastic. You're talking about timely tools. You're hitting on the tools when the educators need them, and you know, it's like we say, like, you know, we're providing a service. You're there to share stuff that educators need, and the proof is in the pudding, as they say, right?
Yeah, I was pretty sure that what I was creating was going to resonate with teachers. It's funny because, you know, when you do YouTube, you basically just have to put out content for a while and have nobody watch it and pretend as though people are going to watch it. And I had this feeling like, you know, if people could just see how to bridge the gap between these awesome programs and how the programs work and actual implementation in the classroom, which was a real focus of mine in the beginning, you know, doing things like showing how to use Flipgrid and then actually showing this is what the classroom looks like when you have all the kids in front of computers, or we did green screen videos in the class and this is what it actually looks like to set up a green screen studio in the class. So, you know, I was pretty convinced that more teachers would start using education technology platforms if they just could see from sort of couch to finish what it would look like to actually put it in place and be able to see the impact that it could have. And I made that kind of content for no audience for a while. And then, you know, school closures happened and things changed dramatically.
You were definitely there for people when they needed you. I like, it's a great point about the way you do your content, that the tech companies tend to put out their own videos that are somehow like 2.5 minutes long. And you're like, you cannot get your whole tool into 2.5 minutes. And it's like, do this and do this and do this and do this. And at 2.5 minutes, and there's some really fun, like YouTube audio library music that plays and it's over. And I'm like, well, that's great. Now I know what the tool does, but now I need to find somewhere else to learn how to use it. Right. And I feel like you were saying there, like you're really modeling it from the teacher perspective in the videos.
Yeah. And I was trying to squeeze in between this gap between that type of content that was definitely not comprehensive enough and that requires tons of gap filling for a teacher to actually be able to implement it. And the other style of content, which is not bad, but this really long form, you know, unedited, you have to watch it and it's not particularly entertaining. So I tried to, and I'm still trying out new things and videos every single week to YouTubeify the experience of teacher PD and do things where every single thing, you know, it's like I have a rule that if I'm going to make a statement, I have to show it on the screen. I have to have some kind of call out. And now I'm also trying to do things to just also lighten it up, like bring in humor and B-roll and just silly stuff like that. But I just saw there really being a market for entertaining PD around how to, improve your instruction with technology.
Yeah, I got to tell you, too, the thing I respect about it is I've been trying to put out some YouTube videos lately. I tried to do it years ago before the podcast started, and I've ramped it up lately and put a few out and recorded a few that are still in various stages of editing. And man, it takes a long time. I think people probably underestimate how much time you're putting into those videos. I think it's true with podcasts, it's true with blog posts, it's true with everything. Like if it takes you X number of minutes to listen to it, just multiply that by 5, and that's how long it took the guy on the other end or the gal on the other end. Would you how long do you what's that?
5,000.
5,000, yeah. So a 10-minute video takes you 50,000 minutes to prepare, you think?
Well, that feels like it. Yeah.
Feels like it. Nice. All right, Sam. Well, we're going to start off the show with a game. Are you up for a game?
Absolutely.
Okay, we're going to play a game of 2 truths and 1 lie. I'm going to ask you to give me 3 statements. 2 will be true and 1 will be a lie. And I'm going to try to guess which one's your lie. And I almost never get it right. So don't judge me too much when I'm wrong, okay?
2 truths and 1 lie.
So one of them actually is about what you just said, and it's about content production and the inordinate amount of time that it takes to do it. So one is that I produce all of my own video content, including scripting, filming, editing, graphics design, everything that goes into it.
Okay.
The second is that I own 3 dogs that bark loudly when someone comes to the house. And if you listen very closely, you'll hear them in the background of some of my videos and live shows.
I actually just saw a shirt advertised on Facebook from one of my favorite t-shirt companies that had a picture of a computer with like a dog's head sticking out of it, and it said, "Can you hear my dog?" like that. I need to get you that shirt, Sam. Okay, now, and statement number 3. Right.
Third is that I film all of my videos and host my weekly live show in an unfinished shed in the woods without insulation or sheetrocked walls, and up until recently, only an extension cord for electricity.
Okay. I that one seems a little bit far-fetched. So we've got a shed in the woods using just until recently just an extension cord for electricity, and then there was the loud excited dog who sometimes barks during the videos, and then the first one was that you prepare every element of this project by yourself, right?
Correct.
I would respect all of those, Sam. I have to tell you, I'd respect you greatly if you did all that work yourself. I would also respect you greatly if you called out for help, and it's a big thing to do too, because sometimes you got to focus on just certain parts of a project. I'm a dog guy myself. My dog's super quiet; he doesn't bark very much. I think the lie is the third one. There's no way that one's true.
That is true. Actually, I do legitimately film all of my videos and host my live show in an unfinished shed, et cetera, et cetera. I do.
Nice. Is that brick wall that I could see behind you? Is that a legit wall in the shed, or
no?
Is that
it's not. So fun fact is that I am sort of forced into green screening everything because I do all of my videos and shows in an unfinished shed in the woods. I'm working on it.
Someday, so like you got to make a contest for people to win an opportunity to see the real shed.
Oh yeah, I thought about making a video about it. I think people would be pretty flabbergasted. I mean, I used to actually make all of my videos in my classroom. And I had these beautiful, I taught in San Francisco for 7 years, and I had these beautiful, massive windows that brought in all this natural light. It was awesome. Great for natural light for videos. And, but my wife and I moved up to the Sierra foothills closer to our family after the pandemic, and we're still here. And so I had to kind of find these nooks and crannies to work. And actually for a while I was doing it in the basement, and we're on a well here actually. And so, we have this water system that kicks in. And so I would be sometimes literally in the middle of a conference, and there'd be this rushing water coming through. And it was, destructive to a presentation.
Sounds like your house might be flooding mid video.
I ended up getting this shed, and I'm in a shed right now. and that's where I make my videos. So I had to improvise. Yeah.
Some people have there are she sheds, and you've got a video shed, right?
I very much have a video shed.
you if you want to sound fancy, you can call it your studio. But I think the cooler thing to say is, this is my shed in the woods.
It's definitely my shed in the woods. Yeah.
That is amazing. I did not see that coming. Yeah, you caught me off guard on that one. Okay. Then the other ones were you do every step of it yourself, and then the other one is the dog. I do not hear a snoring dog right now or a barking dog, so I think the dog is the lie now. That's why I've narrowed it down now.
So the dog is also the truth.
Okay. I told you I'm bad at this.
Actually, So in one of my videos at Google Classroom for parents, I just could not edit out the dog barking. It was shortly after we gotten a puppy, and there's a puppy barking in the background. And often there's something about the time when I do my live shows where they just like have to start making some noise. So if they ever go long, it's almost inevitable that at the end of the show, there's going to be some dog barking in it. Yeah. So the lie is that I do everything on my own. I actually used to, but as I've, expanded and tried to do other things like, professional development and all that. My brother has joined my team. So the new EdTech Classroom is a team of two.
Nice.
It's my brother, Mac, and I taught him video editing, and now he's taken it over as his project. So I do the raw footage, and we have intricate notes in the script about how things should be done, but work with my brother. It's actually been awesome. Really fun to create with him and have, this really intimate like work relationship where we talk every single day for hours and stuff and make content. So he's an awesome addition to the team, and just want to make sure people know that he also contributes significantly to the content creation.
Yeah. Well, thanks, Mac. I'm glad he's there doing it, because and I think I was like, one question I wanted to ask you is, how are you making this many videos and still doing all the other stuff? And that's part of it. And a lot of the times when you see people that are really rocking it and creating a lot of stuff, like, they have been brave enough to ask for help, because that helps you focus on what your true passion is and where your true power in it is. And I'm sure you were probably thinking like, I like video editing. I'm guessing you like video editing, but that's not the sweet spot for you. The sweet spot was talking about the EdTech, right?
Yeah. I mean, I did about 80 videos or something on my own. And after that, I no longer liked it as much. I mean, there's a creative element for sure to video editing that is, you can definitely get in your zen and in your zone doing it, but there's a tedium to it too. And, to make it good, you have to be so attentive to detail and precise.
Yeah. Well, you could tell that you're putting the time in, and that you have not sacrificed the time, like cut down the amount of work put in order to get out more content. You could tell that the time's being put in, because they come out great. And I think that's an important message for people to know, that it's like, sometimes if you want great content, you're going to have to put time into it. And teachers know that so well, right? We know that sometimes that 40-minute lesson might have taken 3 hours to prep or plan or more. And sometimes it's worth it, because the bang for your buck is there, and it helps your students. And for you in this situation, it's helping the people that are viewing the videos, right?
100%. Yeah. I mean, in teaching, crowdsourcing good ideas, why not? That's how you accelerate quickly. Yeah. So same thing with content production. And in that sense, it allows me to actually focus much more on what's a funny little joke I can insert here, or like a funny B-roll clip I might think about putting in, so I can think on that level and not have to be sort of down in the weeds with the chroma key and figuring out all the exact placement of the call outs and all that. But my brother does an incredible job. He's so attentive to that detail. And, he gets things like hits the call out right on when I'm mentioning something. And, so he's an artist in and of himself doing that too.
I was wondering why your videos got suddenly better at video 81 and then just took up up to video 80. The editing was kind of shaky, and then after 81, I'm like, wow, Sam's stuff got so good.
I'll have to go in and like mark them, on the
channel. Asterisk, like this is the pre-Mac years. Nice. I'm teasing. They're all amazing. All right, well, let's jump into some educational duct tape right now. So, Sam, I've got a question for you. So, first of all, for those people listening who might be new to the show, educational duct tape is my silly metaphor and EdTech integration mindset that educational technology is at its best, not when it's the goal of our lesson or the focus of what we're trying to do, but when it is the tool that we're using to solve a problem or meet a goal or address a learning standard. So when we come at things like a teacher and then see where the EdTech fits, not when we come at things as an EdTech integrator and then think about how we could use it as a teacher. We're teachers first. So that's educational duct tape. So just like duct tape is a tool, educational technology is a tool. So I have a question for you that I've actually asked multiple times on the show because I think it's just such an important concept and there's so many ways to attack it. And I like hearing different people's perspective on it. So my question for you is, and I think it's a question that teachers ask often, how can I develop engaging instruction? How can I make my instruction engaging?
I think it's important to actually start by just talking about why engagement is so important. To me, figuring out how we engage young people in learning is really the single most important question. It is like the question in education because it doesn't really matter if you're a student or you're an adult. If you're invested in what you're doing on a day-to-day basis, you're genuinely engaged. I believe a person can achieve absolutely anything. So to me, engagement is kind of like the skeleton key that unlocks academic success and really is what we should be focusing on kind of all the time. And luckily, I think there's actually a ton that we can do to increase engagement in our classrooms and in our schools. I also think that this engagement question is something that has stumped educators for years. And it's also led to some of the more pervasive myths that we have in education. One of those being the sort of cult of personality and the idea that engagement is about being the superhero personality who can captivate audiences and motivate students, right? Based on just the strength of your presence in the classroom.
Yeah, that was me as a rookie teacher, right? I came in entertaining and telling jokes, and we did have fun, but that doesn't mean that once we then flip the switch over to the learning process, that anything engaging was happening at that point.
Yeah, and the problem with that is that it's not mappable, it's not scalable, it's not even necessarily teachable because it's sort of inherently this intangible thing, and so I think it actually it perpetuates a sort of stuck element and not being able to really unlock student engagement. And, that problem has been exacerbated tenfold now with remote learning, right? There's this kind of national anxiety about student engagement right now, students not logging in, students not necessarily completing assignments, students not sharing ideas online, right? Or during online learning. And so on and so forth, not turning on cameras, things like that, right? Which, by the way, I don't think is a sign of engagement. I'm just saying that that's being expressed as what teachers are seeing. And I think that is now leading to, that's really the source of this other huge myth that we're seeing play out right now. And that is that the way we're going to solve this disengagement problem is that we just have to get everybody back in a physical classroom as soon as possible. And what concerns me about that is not so much, I'm not actually arguing for or against going back to school, but I just think that it's sort of reflective of a lack of imagination and not actually getting to the root problem of how do we actually engage students? Because what are we going to rush back to a system that didn't do so great? And I just think really grappling with this and thinking about how we can actually use this moment as this moment of disruption, right? This moment of relative chaos to try to apply some innovative thinking, to think in outside the box about how we can sort of recreate schools and classrooms that genuinely ignite passion for learning, truly engage students in meaningful, authentic learning experiences, and that learning experiences that prepare them for the world in which they live. Right.
Yeah.
I truly believe if we don't get this question right, we're just going to continue to see the fallout. We're going to go back. We're going to go back to in-person learning, and we're going to have large swaths of students leaving our education system underprepared for the jobs of the future, disengaged from lifelong learning. So, really, I think it's like actually the future prosperity of our society depends on, can we figure out how to engage students? So that's the levity of the question. I think it's an incredibly important and central question to what we do.
Yeah. So this isn't just like, what should we have for dinner tonight or anything, or like, what color shirt should I wear to work today? Like this is big, huh?
This is big. Yeah. I mean, this is, I think, what should be on every teacher's minds, essentially at all times, right?
Mm-hmm.
So the one element of this like superhero teacher myth that I do agree with in part is this idea that passion can be conveyed and imparted to students. And so I do think that there is an element of engagement where a person, an educator, does need to find something that excites them, find something that they're enthusiastic about so that they can impart that upon students. So there is an element of personality about it, but kind of putting that aside, I do also think that there are very clear, tangible steps that an individual teacher can take to make more instruction more engaging. And I believe that the single most impactful lever that a teacher can pull is lesson design.
Yeah.
I'm sure most listeners out there are familiar with the TPACK model. And I really believe in that model, and for those who are not familiar, it's looking at the intersection of content, research-based instructional practices, and also technology tools that can help us put those practices in place. And the reason why that's so important is, you can have these awesome instructional strategies. You can have a gamified classroom and be using all the latest tech tools to gamify your class. But if ultimately what you're asking students to learn isn't all that compelling, then, that's not going to get you that far.
Right. So let's talk TPACK really quick, actually, because I have not addressed TPACK on the show. Somehow we're 80 or so episodes in and have never talked TPACK. So TPACK, I'm sure when people look at the acronym, they're probably guessing the T stands for technology, right? So we're talking about three things, and you kind of mentioned them in there. So it's technology, pedagogy.
Yep.
I'm typing them in the show notes as I say this for those of you at home driving on the road right now.
What's weird about it is it's technological, pedagogical, and content knowledge, hence the CK.
Okay. Yeah. Technological. Okay, I'm fixing that in my notes so I don't say technology. Pedagogical or gogical? How do you say it?
Pedagogical.
What matters here, Sam, is that you say it. It doesn't matter how you say it. So if somebody's like they're saying it wrong, who cares? We're saying it and we're admitting that it's important here, right? So TPACK focuses on whereas some people talk about the SAMR model, right? Which I think the SAMR model is good too. I think they both have value in them. The SAMR model talks about just how are we integrating the technology? Are we integrating the technology to substitute for what we could do without it? Are we augmenting what we could do without it? Are we modifying what we could do without it? Or are we redefining what we could do without it? And that's great. We do want to move up that ladder of SAMR. The higher up we get, there's likelihood that we're getting better. But the TPACK model goes a step beyond that and says, okay, now take your great stuff you're doing with technology and make sure you're mixing it in with these other elements of what makes good engaging instruction, right? Or learning, I should say.
Absolutely. Yeah. So it's that intersection of deep content understanding, which again, I think can be articulated in lesson design through essential questions, thematic units, cohesive lessons that are all building and very clearly toward answering some larger compelling question. And then also integrating research-based pedagogical practices. And the technology piece comes in because so many of those research-based instructional practices are frankly next to impossible to implement without the right tool. So it's about the tool that can help support that. And then some, right? Because there's actually so much more that you can do when you start bringing in technology. Once we have a really clear understanding of that content piece, then we can start to put together, the pedagogy, the technology. And I actually don't think this is a mystery either. I think that there's a clear list even that teachers can apply to their own classrooms, that instructional coaches can apply when they go observe other classrooms, that schools can look at to determine, where are our strengths, where are some of our areas of growth. And these are all based on research-based practices. One being active learning, right? We know that students learn best when they are not learning passively, when they get to interact at all times during the lesson. They're asked to show what they know. They're asked to show what they know in varied ways, right? Drawing, with audio, with video, by, responding in text, sure. And the content is also interactive, right? So you're no longer just reading a static web page. You're no longer just reading a static article or just watching a video. You have questions you have to answer. So you are engaged at all times with all of that content, right? So there's literally, almost no moment in the class when the student isn't doing something, right? And doing something that's engaging all kinds of different learning modalities. There are all kinds of programs that support with this, right? Nearpod is obviously well known for that. Pear Deck, ClassKick, Whiteboard.fi, Whiteboard.chat. Programs for interactive content that I love, like Actively Learn is an amazing program for building interactive content. EdPuzzle, Nearpod too, right? So that's a critical piece. And actually that's, I think, oftentimes an entry piece for a lot of teachers, that they can really see how instructional technology can have a huge impact on engagement by bringing active learning into their classroom, right? So they're no longer just up there lecturing, right? And that's what I find so, it's hard to see so many people trying to replicate that kind of lecture structure through like Zoom or Google Meet, when there's all these awesome interactivity tools out there. Just because you're on Zoom or Google Meet doesn't mean you actually have to be like teaching in Zoom or Google Meet. You can be on all these awesome active learning platforms, right?
Right. So we have hit on a number of those on the show. We have done Nearpod and Pear Deck. I would venture to say, maybe because I'm the guy on this side of the microphone, ad nauseum on the show, because they're phenomenal. I mean, they are phenomenal tools. So since we've got some other tools there to talk about, we've talked a little bit about ClassKick. I'd love to hear about the differentiation between Whiteboard.chat and Whiteboard.fi. But one thing that we have not discussed at all on the show is Active Learn. Would you share a little bit about what that is and how that works?
Yeah. So Actively Learn is primarily a archive of text-based resources. However, it's now become more than that. So if you check out Actively Learn, you can sign up for a free account. They have searchable articles. You can search based on subject. You can search based on grade level. You can search based on lexile level. And so they have a huge archive of content. And then every single article in Actively Learn is interactive. So that means that it already has some teacher notes. So students can click on words and it pops up maybe a note that gives them some additional information to help build schema about a concept, for example. And it has interactive questions that students have to answer to proceed through. So similar to like an EdPuzzle video where you can't continue watching, you have to answer that question. And those can be polls, multiple choice, open answer questions. Those are all fully customizable too. So you can edit those as you'd like. And you can also, in any place of the text, just add your own interactive question. And then the student experience is also a fully dynamic text. So they can click anywhere on the text and they can pull up a definition of a word. They can pull up a translation. They can hear a word read aloud to them. So there's just all this, like accessibility baked into it. And you can fully customize the text and make it interactive, in a way that allows you to see in real time too, exactly how students are doing. So, it gives you real time reports and you can pull reports, all of that. Now you can also, what I also love about it is you can upload your own content. So you can like plug in a website address.
I was just going to ask you that question.
Yeah. You can plug a website address in and it will allow you to flip a web page into a fully interactive text in exactly the same way, where the entire thing is interactive, where you can choose anywhere on the web page to insert a question where it's going to prevent them from scrolling down. You can do that with video content. So you can upload your own videos or YouTube videos, and you can even upload PDFs. PDFs don't work quite the same way. It will only put a question at the bottom. They're not able to break it up into chunks in the same way that they can with a regular article. But you can upload now essentially any content you can imagine and make it interactive. And they also have not just nonfiction text, but actual full fiction text, like entire books on there that are interactive, right? Wow. So they have like all the classics and stuff that, wow. They all have interactive questions built into them.
Wow. So you could, so let's say I'm teaching one of those books. I could take, it's already there and it already has some like those teacher notes kind of things added in, also already has some questions added in, but then I can add some of my own or modify those ones, right?
That's correct.
And then after the kids go through it, I can go back and see who did it. Did they finish? How they perform? Where did they struggle? What do I need to support them with? Stuff like that too.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Wow, that's huge.
And there are some features that are you can unlock access to more text with the premium versions. There's a as with all the programs, there's differences. There's a free version that's quite robust. There's a Prime version that allows you to access some different, like they actually have curriculums in there. I think with the Prime version where you can access like your textbook, your digital version of your textbook and stuff that's been made interactive. But yeah, it's pretty awesome.
For the people who are new to the TPACK model that we were talking about earlier, which I'm guessing some people are, where do you see that intersecting with the TPACK model? Like let's say you do an actively learn lesson in class tomorrow. How do you feel like that scores on the quote unquote scores in terms of the TPACK model?
Yeah. So, essentially, I think we can enumerate a handful of high impact pedagogical strategies, high impact instructional strategies, I should say, research based pedagogy. And so the point that I was making is that active learning is one of those. It's we know that students learn best when they are learning actively participating as opposed to passively learning. And that has, of course, it's not just active learning. It's also formative assessment. So it gives the teacher data about what we need to review or who might need to get pulled into a group. And it's the other amazing thing about it is that it also dovetails with another huge category, and that's student awareness and agency, and investment in their own learning, because it allows you to see immediately like, I knew that, I got that right, or I did not get that right. I didn't understand that. And they're just brought into that experience of seeing that in real time, which I feel like is so much more powerful than you see how you answered those comprehension questions like a week later and you don't look at it, so it's also, I think, a tool for self-directed learning.
Yeah. Self-assessment brings them on board to take a little more ownership over their learning. What kind of questions can you add into Actively Learn?
Multiple choice, open-ended, or poll questions.
So, and obviously the multiple choice auto grade, and then the other ones you go back and grade later.
Yeah. And you can actually set up a rubric and give them like a 4-point scale with a comment, and you can align them to depth of knowledge. And I believe I think this is the only Prime feature, pretty sure you can align them to standards and then have pretty dynamic reports pulled.
Wow. That's great. Do you have a video on your site or on your site on YouTube? Oh, nice. We'll make sure I get that link in the show notes to make sure people can go and see that. Because I think I am aware of Actively Learn, but not very familiar with it. And I haven't used it myself. So I'm going to be watching that video. And I think that's probably where a lot of listeners come down to, where they've heard the name, they've heard of it and are aware of it. But having that video to kind of walk them through that will be really nice.
Yeah.
Really nice.
Yeah. I just published one a couple of weeks ago.
Wow, well, that is perfect timing then.
It's called Actively Learn Tutorial for Teachers. So
nice and well named as well. Nice. Well, yeah, I'm excited to check that out. Hey listeners, this episode is also sponsored by Spaces Digital Portfolios. Spaces makes student growth in your classroom visual with their free visual portfolio tool. Teachers can create spaces for their entire classroom, for student groups, or for individual students, all online and completely free. Celebrate student learning with a digital portfolio platform backed by 15 years of teacher feedback. Try Spaces at www.spacesedu.com today. And while you're there, you should check out their Competencies Without a Classroom podcast, which includes an episode with yours truly. Anyhow, they're currently running a series of 21 episodes focused on 21st century skills, and those episodes come with a plethora of giveaways if you tune in during May of 2021. You could find it on their site under the Resources tab. Again, check out their Competencies Without a Classroom podcast and try Spaces at spacesedu.com today.
Yeah, and then the other thing I'm interested in, and what you were talking about there with the active learning tools, are Whiteboard.chat and Whiteboard.fi. Do you have a preference between the two of them, and or is there a time where you'd use one versus the other?
Yeah, and so for those who aren't familiar, these programs are a little bit different from a program like Jamboard, which is, it's kind of, Jamboard is more designed for collaboration and all working together on a board, or small groups on a board, or teacher and student on a board. Whereas these programs are more like the digital version of a student having a mini whiteboard and being able to do work at their desk and then show that work.
Yeah, I almost feel like calling them whiteboard, having the name whiteboard in them, is a little bit misleading.
Yeah, it's different. I actually think there's a place for a program like Jamboard, Padlet, and then there's a place for the mini whiteboard style of program. But they're, like with every tech tool, they're a supercharged mini whiteboard because you can push out any type of media through them, embed videos and websites and things like that. So I find the Whiteboard.fi interface a little bit more intuitive and more responsive and a little bit easier to use. They have a tiered pricing system now. They were recently bought out by Kahoot. They were 100% free, and then they had like one pricing model, and now they have some different pricing models. And I don't begrudge that at all. I mean, people have to make their money. And it's a great tool. I really appreciate it.
Yeah.
Whiteboard.chat is an interesting player. They're a relatively new tool, but there's tons of buzz about them, and it's completely free, and it has literally like every single feature that people complain about and all the other programs they keep adding new features. I see their Twitter feed. It's like they add some new feature, and that can actually make it a little bit overwhelming at first. There's so much on the screen. Like, oh my goodness, there's like a gazillion tools. And even I look at it like, whoa.
Yeah. I teased them recently. They tweeted out, it's been a month or two, but they tweeted out like a new features list, and it was their document that listed all the features. And it was an image, it was a graphic, and it had to have been like on like size 7 point font because there's so many things to list. And I tweeted it out and I said, a tool has a lot of features when you have to use 7-point font to list them all in like a 3-column bullet list. There's so many different things in there.
Yeah, for sure. ClassKick is like that too. I actually think it has a relatively steep learning curve for teachers and students. Whereas Nearpod and Pear Deck have this controlled element of response. You're controlling, you can draw, you can respond through a poll. Teachers and students they have the whole open, wide range of options. So I think that can be a little bit intimidating, but I actually think that those tools are a place to go once you build your skills and kind of exhaust some of the other programs. And if you're starting to feel like, I'm sort of seeing the limit to those. A next step could be Formative is another one. Formative, ClassKick, Whiteboard.chat potentially.
Yeah, what I love about Formative is, among other things, is a great tool. But one of the things I love about it is if you're in like a situation where you're trying to do mastery-based grading or standards-based grading, or just track a kid's comprehension across a wide variety of skills, Formative's data piece is just killer. Like their organization of the standards, if you're standards aligning your content, is huge. Your ability to look and see like this kid needs help on that skill is really good and formative.
Right. Yeah. And it's those types of tools that I think are essential for kind of moving into a fully technology integrated classroom. And those are really how those tools were designed. And so I think in some ways, those are the tools of the future. It's either going to be that, or Nearpod's just going to absorb all those features and further their place as, the sort of Amazon of tech tools. We'll see.
Right. And you're absolutely right. These tools that allow this active learning, ensure this active learning, not just allow, that if you use it right, it allows the teacher to ensure that active learning is taking place, and bring in all of these different ways to do it and measure student understanding and things like that. It's just huge. I do think these are some combination of, or the winner of these tools, something like that is truly a big piece of the future of education. I agree.
Yeah. And I think that's actually where there's been an opening right now. Before the pandemic, the EdTech world was really relegated to a small percentage of teachers. And I think was having difficulty breaking out. I mean, I taught in San Francisco for 7 years and nobody I knew used technology. And I think where the opening is right now is in the interactive piece, the active learning piece. But there's actually a whole lot more. So I still have a list of, different strategies that I think we need to be putting in place to increase engagement. That's just like one piece of it, is this interactive component, but there's other pieces as well.
Well, so I'd love to hear, so that we, to wrap up and not take up too much of your time, but I'd love to hear kind of, if you can give, so we've got the active learning pieces, and I took you down a deep tangent into those. What are some kind of bullet points of some of the other elements that you think are important for engaging instruction?
Yeah. So, and again, I'm not saying that these have to be in place at all times in every class. It's more that this can be a roadmap to a goal to achieve. Personalized instruction. So using programs that allow for some time in class to be used for personalized learning, whether that's leveled instruction for reading or personalized math games and ST Math, Prodigy, things like that. So that students are really feeling like they get, the skill building they need at their level. Tools to implement UDL, which is, we know the way to differentiate. It's the way to put differentiation into practice, where we are understanding the entry points and barriers to our curriculum, and we are using technology to make that first tier more accessible rather than thinking about the tier 2, tier 3 first. We're making sure that we're providing multiple ways to engage, access information, for multiple ways for students to show knowledge. Authentic assessment of knowledge. So asking students to apply higher order thinking skills, specifically having them apply skills in the 4 C's, using technology to think critically about the information that's in the digital world, to create with technology rather than just consume it, practice collaboration skills, communication skills with technology. And then there's also the element of building in choice, autonomy, and agency with choice boards and self-assessment and digital portfolios and data tracking. Gamification of learning, right? Which is not
this is not a list. This is the list, Sam. This
is what I mean by engagement, because it's all under, engagement is like a holistic project. You have to be constantly working at putting in these different elements, right? So, gamification, and I think gamification is not just about, games. It's about tracking progress and building upon something you've accomplished in the past. It's something that it motivates everybody, right? Yeah. And then the last piece, I think, that is not conventional knowledge so much, or it's not, I should say it's not conventionally accepted, is variety. So I actually am totally in the opposite corner from the perspective that we should only use like a couple of tools. I actually think we should use all the tools. I mean, that's an over exaggeration, but I think we should be exposing students to lots of different tools and programs. And that's what's going to authentically build skills and foundational technology skills and prepare students to be able to be fluidly navigating in digital spaces. So and I think that's engaging. We live in a world of people want to be stimulated all the time. And so I think thinking strategically, it's not just like throwing everything at the wall, but thinking strategically about how you can constantly be mixing it up and bringing different tools in.
Yeah, I was actually on a podcast recently, and they asked me, what one tool do I think goes beyond just classroom learning that kids need to be proficient with and learn about to benefit them in their future or something like that. And I was like,
there's not a tool for that. I think kids need to be technologically ambidextrous is what I told them. And that doesn't mean they should learn every tool. And that doesn't mean that their teacher should learn every tool or should use every tool. It means that the student should be able to easily and fluently pivot between tools. And when they're not familiar with a tool, they should have a background in using other tools that help them function within those tools. And I think obviously, yeah, some variety, a lot of variety might not always be realistic, but the more variety we could build in, it certainly does build some engagement for sure.
Yeah.
For myself, Sam, I'm an 8th grade teacher this year. I was last an 8th grade teacher 9 years ago for 1 year. And now I'm in year 2 of teaching 8th grade in my 19th year in a school. And I'm struggling a lot of the time. So my classroom, I do not do digital portfolios or gamify. I mean, we play some games, but that's not true gamification. I rarely do anything that qualifies choice boards, even though I love choice boards. We occasionally create, and we often create things like drawing diagrams and our own versions of diagrams in Pear Deck and things like that. But we're not truly creating. We hit on some of the 4 C's. I put in as much UDL as I can. But I feel like I'm knocking it out of the park on active learning this year. And I know that next year, my goal, when I look at this list of things we just talked about, I know that next year I want to ramp up the level of choice and the amount of autonomy. And then I know that after that, I'll then go, maybe mid-year, what can I add in? Or maybe year 3 of this, what can I add in? And as I go, maybe then digital portfolios comes next, and maybe gamification comes next. And then naturally, as I add in that choice, then variety is coming in. And I think it's important for teachers to know that this is the full playbook. And it's like when we think of that, about that new quarterback joining the team in their rookie year, or the new wide receiver, and you might hear them say on ESPN, they're not using the whole playbook with him yet. Like, he's got to learn the whole playbook. Like, we learn the base set of tools, and when we're ready, we ramp up the other ones. Do you agree with that?
Oh yeah, completely agree. And it's more that I think, so yeah, I would never suggest that anybody could even be capable of having all of these things running at the same time.
Right.
But these are high impact engagement practices that you can use strategically when you understand what issues are coming up in your classroom. So students are bored, right? Get them gamifying. If students are not able to access content, an engagement strategy with technology is UDL. Right? It's personalized instruction. So it's also about knowing the root cause of some of your engagement issues and having the instructional strategy and the tool to be able to match it. There are some folks, if you've been using Nearpod all year, maybe variety is actually a strategy that you want to bring in to address that particular engagement issue.
Yeah.
So yeah, these are all I'm more trying to say these are all high impact practices that we should have, I think, at the ready or know are there that we could explore and kind of go down that path. And I sometimes refer to some of them as, bringing out the big guns in spring, for example. You have a real, like, your class is bored, and that's when you're going to bring in GimKit or BlueKit or any other type. You're going to, hey, we're doing Classcraft and we're gamifying the entire class right now. Just something that's kind of a radical shift that you're going to bring in that's fun and exciting. And I think it's so much more important to think in terms of these categories than to think in terms of a tool. Like, I heard about Flipgrid, I heard about Pear Deck, I heard about GimKit, and I just want to try it. Well, no, like, I'm trying it because we have this engagement issue around, this particular root cause. And so I'm going to apply this tool, which gets back to the idea of, educational duct tape, right? I mean, that's the right tool for the right task.
Right. I like that you drilled down with your examples and said, if I realize that all my kids are bored, or if I realize that some of the kids are struggling to access the content, if this, I'm going to do that. If this, I'm going to do that. And then,
is it time for Blue-Kit or is it time for Classcraft? Like you mentioned, what is the right tool for this specific need? So education, teaching is or should be a very reflective task where we're reflecting back and looking at data, whether qualitative or quantitative, and thinking about where are our pain points right now and where can I get better?
If you're going to focus on a couple of things to start with, active learning actually the very first needs to be the content. Mm-hmm. If you don't have the content, nothing else really matters. I mean, if again, just getting back to that idea, you have to have compelling content that you are ultimately engaging students in rigorous, interesting concepts, right? That's a key piece. Mm-hmm. But beyond that, when you're getting to instructional strategies and tech, I would say number one priority is active learning. You don't actually have any of these other pieces without active learning. You have to have active learning. I would say that authentic assessment of knowledge and actually getting students to the place where they're able to create and apply forces in some ways is another high priority one. I think you can totally get away without ever doing choice boards or digital portfolios or gamification for that matter. But you do need to have students at some point, or I think strive to get to a place where students can be creating and making physically or with technology, but you're finding ways to have students apply those higher order, Bloom's taxonomy thinking skills, because that can also have a really significant impact. And especially when you start having students social share and post that work and evaluate each other's work, students will get invested in that final project. Like, I want to make that podcast. I want to build that web page. I want to make that video project and share it with everybody. I know we're going to be sharing it, and they get invested in that. And because engagement's holistic, that might be a piece that captures a few of your learners and brings more people into the fold. And it's also high impact in terms of skill building and real world applicability for a student's life to learn how to make things and, teach and stuff like that using technology.
Yeah. Wow, Sam. This was awesome. You shared a lot of amazing stuff and a lot of good points too about how to identify what steps, not only the importance of having engaging instruction, but how to identify what steps are best to take, or not what steps are best, but what steps are best for you in your situation, and maybe in order to go about them and to reflect on where to go next. And then the shares about actively learn, especially, and some of these other tools, the comparisons of Whiteboard.chat and Whiteboard.fi. I think people are, I think people are on their second page of notes right now, jotting down notes from the wisdom from this. So I think I'm going to link into the show notes, Sam, a lot of resources from your YouTube channel, not only about some of the tools we talked about, but I know you've had different videos and webinars and things like that, that focus on some of these topics. I'm going to put those in there for people to jump over to. But thank you so much for doing this tonight. Thank you for all your time, and all your wisdom and shares. This has been some amazing stuff, man.
Yeah, definitely. Thanks for having me and for listening to me pontificate about technology and education.
This is my favorite thing to pontificate about, Sam, and my favorite thing to listen to other people pontificate about. All right. Thanks for being here tonight.
Definitely.
Wow, such a good chat with Sam, and he even taught me about a tool that I've never used, Actively Learn, so I'm excited to learn more about that. I hope that you'll go follow Sam and subscribe to his phenomenal YouTube channel if you don't already. To review a bit of what we talked about today, Sam talked about engagement as the skeleton key that can unlock academic success. I like this metaphor, the skeleton key. Kind of like a skeleton key unlocks a lot of different locks. Engagement can unlock more than just one thing in the classroom, right? More than just learning. It does more than just get students to learn. It does a lot of different things if we can get students engaged in the process too. We debunked the superhero teacher myth, which I like that Sam brought that up, that kind of myth that you have to have this captivating personality in order to be engaging. There's different kinds of engaging. It's not just being the teacher that's fun to listen to and everything like that. Those are great, but that's a myth that's the only way to be engaging. He talked about how you could leverage two of the most common frameworks for technology integration to be more engaging in your classroom. He talked about the TPACK model, and the TPACK acronym stands for Technological, Pedagogical Content Knowledge, TPACK. I've got a link to more details about TPACK in the show notes for you, if that happens to be a new one for you. He also talked about one that's probably more familiar, which is the SAMR model, and that acronym stands for the 4 levels of technology integration: substitution, augmentation, modification, and redefinition. And again, I've got a link in the show notes about that one too, if you want to learn more about it. Sam shared, as I mentioned a couple minutes ago, about Actively Learn, which we compared to kind of like the EdPuzzle for articles. It provides a lot of different texts for for ELA and science and social studies, and builds in some scaffolds and some higher order questions within it. It also does do some videos too. So it's not just like the EdPuzzle for articles. It's kind of a little bit like EdPuzzle itself as well. So definitely go check out Actively Learn. And a good place to start will be Sam's tutorial, which is linked in the show notes. Sam and I did a quick comparison on Whiteboard.chat and Whiteboard.fi, both great tools. We talked about how they can help us see all students' work at once. And Sam kind of boiled it down. I like the way he boiled this down to Whiteboard.chat. First of all, being completely free. Second of all, having so many features. And the problem with that being that it can be a bit overwhelming, but it's great that it has lots of different stuff in it and is free. Whiteboard.fi, on the other hand, is a little bit more user-friendly, probably because it's simpler. And it has less features. So that's a downside, but it does lead to it being a little bit simpler. The other downside of Whiteboard.fi is it's a freemium tool, so you can use it for free, but some features of it require paying for it. Overall, though, both great tools. I'll include videos from Sam relating to each of them in the show notes, so you can check that out. We also touched on personalized instruction with ST Math and Prodigy. We talked about some UDL tools. We talked about using authentic assessments of knowledge, a bit about tapping into the modification, I combined 2 words there, the motivation that gamification, there we go, motivation and gamification together is modification. We talked about how you can combine the 2 of them. And of course, we talked about how variety can help bring some engagement to your classroom. Okay, it's a good thing that that's the last regular episode for a few months, because Sam gave us lots to think about and lots to chew on today. As always, details and links are in the show notes. Last but certainly not least, it is time for my favorite part of the show, which is the celebration of the adjacent possible. As I mentioned earlier, adjacent possible is the idea that whatever you do, whatever you try, whoever you talk to, wherever you go, whoever you listen to, it opens you up to new adjacent possibilities. And the connections and discussions between me and you, between duct tapers, between educators, those open up our adjacent possibilities. So today, in the celebration of Adjacent Possible, I've got 2 SpeakPipe messages for you. The first one comes from longtime listener, early duct taper, and friend of the show, John Hartman. Take it away, John.
Hey, Jake. It's John Hartman from St. Louis area. Longtime listener, first-time SpeakPiper. Just wanted to say thank you for all you do with the podcast and everything and all the blog posts. Very inspiring to all of us. And I was able to use the duct tape technology metaphor in a presentation I gave to a colleague's class, which made a lot smoother for me because I had never done that before. So just keep on doing what you're doing, and we appreciate it. Thank you.
Thanks for that, John. John earned some swag for that message, and he joked in his tweet back to me that he was hoping for an autographed Soapbox headshot. It's a good idea, John. I got a bunch printed, and I'm still waiting for Soapy to sign them. I feel like he's glaring at me from across the room right now, like obstinately saying he's not going to sign them. I don't understand why. He loves fame, so I'm not sure why he wouldn't just sign those so I could send them out to you, John. Finally, to wrap things up, we've got a message from Tina Glansky. Take it away, Tina.
Hi, Jake. Tina from Douglasville, Pennsylvania. Just wanted to let you know that your soapbox moments seem so relevant to everything that's going on right now. The connections that you're making are so authentic since you're a classroom teacher and you are in the foxhole with all of us. And it's so true. Everything we are making seems to take so long and glitches are happening. The frustration is there, but we just all keep plugging away. And I really appreciate everything that you're doing for us to help us connect with the students. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much for those kind words, Tina. This school year has been really tough for me. To be honest, it wasn't what I planned to be doing with my year. My preference would be to be in a tech coaching role, so I didn't choose to be in a classroom, and it's been really tough for me. But the silver lining has been that it's helped me keep in tune with the needs of educators that I seek to support. So that affirmation from you, Tina, is appreciated. That really feels good to hear that. Finally, I owe you all a homework assignment. Today's homework is for you to find an educator who has received the COVID-19 vaccine. Hopefully those are plentiful and very easy for you to find, and thank them for their work as an educator, and thank them for getting vaxxed, and tell them to listen to the show. Okay, that does it for today's episode. Check the show notes for details about signing up for my newsletter, joining the Duct Tapers Facebook group, inquiring about having me speak at an upcoming event, getting some podcast stickers, and more. And don't forget to do your homework. As always, I'm grateful for the work you do, and as an educator, I'm proud of your dedication to lifelong learning.
Thank you for listening to the Educational Duct Tape Podcast. Please consider rating and reviewing the show on your favorite podcast app. #EduDuctTape.